In the meantime, our last guest has arrived. Welcome, Dirk Helbing. Thank you for joining us. And sorry about the language barrier, but you can amuse yourself in the meantime, right? We can go have a drink. Yeah. Sara Brodersen, you started Deemly in April of last year. Mm-hmm. Perhaps you can explain the name first.
Sure. So the name comes from, to deem something means, I deem you relevant or I deem you good. And
Often.
Yeah. So it's fairly simple. Yes.
Yeah. And tell us what Deemly does. Or no, better yet, you have a video that explains briefly what Deemly does. Let's look at the video first.
She's a keen traveller, often renting apartments from others, and she loves to swap trendy clothes and dresses. She's looking to catch her first lift from a rideshare app, but has no previous reviews to help support her. Aww. Luckily, she's just joined Deemly, where her positive feedback from the other sites appears as a Deem score, helping her to win a rideshare in no time. Deemly is free to join and support users across many platforms, helping you to share and benefit from the great reputation you've earned. Imagine the power of using your Deem score alongside your CV for a job application, perhaps to help get a bank loan, or even to link to from your dating profile. Sign up now at deemly.co. Deemly. Better your sharing.
Sarah, what gave you this idea?
Sure. I think maybe a comment on the video first. Oh. This was a video we did 1.5 years ago. And I think, the business now is also that we sell software to platforms that enables them to build trust for their community. So it's much more than the video, but that was sort of the initial idea. So you've gone from a consumer-related C2B to a B2B? Yes, exactly. That's sort of the journey that we've been through. Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's quick.
Yes, yeah. We run quick. No, but the idea came about because I did research on my thesis in the sharing economy. And so I interviewed a lot of these sharing economy entrepreneurs that have started platforms, and they all said, our biggest issue is creating trust for our users. So when someone is coming to stay in an apartment, how do I know that I can trust that person? And yes, rating and reviews are a big part of that, but that doesn't happen until the first transaction. And at the same time, there were reports coming out, both from Denmark, where I'm from, but also the US, saying up to 90% of people are scared of taking part in this sharing economy, partly because they don't trust strangers. And for me, the sharing economy also represents an opportunity for us to, improve the environment if we're better at accessing the resources that are not being used, getting better at creating a community where we have, better culture of sharing and so on. So this was an important thing for me to help the sharing economy grow, basically. Yeah.
But there's a big step between the sharing economy and making reputation management into the core of your business.
But the driver of the sharing economy is trust, right? So that's how we're born out of, and the examples in the video is sort of, utopian future thoughts we had at the time, because when we talked to people about this reputation management, everyone was sort of, oh, this could also be beneficial for this and this and this. And we've actually been, contacted by banks, and they're already
That's what I find so scary, Sarah.
Yeah, I do too. I'm not saying it, and it's not something that we're doing as well, but we are being contacted by a lot of organizations that see the value in this. And, there are pros and cons to some of the things. So
the banks actually see Deemly and my reputation on Deemly, my score. They see that actually as a credit rating.
So maybe not us specifically, but at least they contact us to get our knowledge into what's going on in this industry. And one of the projects that are going on is a bank in Asia that is saying, well, we want to give loans to trustworthy people, not based on how much money they have, because just because you have a lot of money doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to pay them back. But if you're a trustworthy person, you probably will. So it's also mitigating risk for them as banks.
I'm not surprised that they're interested in this.
Yeah.
But is this what deemly is for? How do you feel about requests like this from banks? Do you give them what they want?
No. I mean, we don't share data with anyone that contact us in terms of that. I'm happy to discuss it, as I'm happy to discuss here today as well, because it is an important topic, and there are pros and cons to what we do, and we take that very seriously. But the reason why we started is also to democratize this for their users. So if someone has a good reputation as an Airbnb host, why shouldn't they be allowed to take that onto a different platform? So that's a goal for me, and I don't want to be, this big brother that's calculating everyone's trustworthiness. And I mean, we're working on putting everything on the blockchain, and then it will be all out of our hands anyway. So that's
Maybe that's
goal.
a good safeguard.
Well, I want the users to own their own data, right? And this is the first step into doing that.
But speaking of that monetization of our reputation and of people's trust in us, when we spoke beforehand, you said that our reputation is now a form of currency. And I thought that has that idea in it already, that our reputation is worth money, and it is, because it gives us trustworthiness at the bank. We can get a loan, all the various facilities that are available to you only if you're trusted and have a good reputation. But isn't that aren't you creating the very trap that you're trying to avoid with this deemly?
But I think we need to remember that this data is already out there. So the only thing we're doing is allowing users to aggregate it. And we're not judging people, right? So we're saying, here's the data based on previous transactions. And it's up to other peers to assess, is that trustworthy enough for me? Do I trust that person enough to let them stay in my apartment or to drive with them or so on? So the data is already out there, and we're not creating any magic numbers or anything.
So in principle, if any customer of deemly, I could look on Airbnb if I were renting a place, or on Uber, and I could, if I went to all that trouble, actually find all this information myself as that company.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you aggregate it, and then users give you permission to aggregate it.
Yes, we don't scrape anything, so it's completely voluntary. Users have to log in. We don't store any passwords or log in. We're also data compliant and everything else. Yes.
So what's the business model?
Sure. So we're helping platforms create trust between their users through their reputation. So our API allows platforms to install the sign-up flow, which means that if you come to a platform and say, okay, it might be a bike-sharing platform, and you say, okay, well, I was trustworthy on Airbnb, I have lots of ratings, I'd like to show that on this platform. You can log in through our system and then show that you're a trustworthy person.
So users give you permission to access that data?
Yes.
And then you sell the software to platforms who would want to read that data?
They want to create trust between their users, right? They want as much activity as possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the businesses buying that information would be platforms like Facebook, Uber, Google?
They're not buying the information, they're buying the system that allows users to log in. So they don't have access to that information, but they allow users to sort of sign up through our technology.
So what is it that you're selling? The software?
Software.
The access?
Yes, software.
And not the information itself?
No, exactly.
I find it's really the epitome of the new developments with data, because I can imagine that it's really convenient and that you can grow your trust in each other and in potential customers. But at the same time, I find it difficult to accept trust as a digital commodity. To me, trust seems like one of the last few things that is really between people.
Yeah.
But deemly makes it into a commodity, and I find that.
I think it's already a commodity. I mean, all the platforms in the sharing economy are doing this already, right? We've been rated on Airbnb for 8 years now, so it's not, we're an aggregator, and that's it. And yeah, I don't see that we're making it into a commodity that is not already.
Yeah, I must say, I have to admit that you're right, because in one of the very first editions of this talk show, we had Snapcar. And even back then, and this was almost 5 years ago now, the founder of Snapcar, Pascal Ontijd, said that he had noticed that, because Snapcar lets people use other people's cars when they're not using them,
Yes.
and that he had noticed that people found it difficult to rent their car to a stranger. They found it easier to rent their car to someone who was in their circle of Facebook friends, even if they didn't know them.
Yes.
But they'd already passed some sort of digital barrier and were sort of okay. And I found that striking, that even though these people did not know each other personally, apparently there was some sort of accountability there,
Yeah.
which made it easier for people to lend out an expensive item like their car.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think one of the interesting projects that we're doing right now is, sorry, I've been talking all day. Sorry. We're working with one of the platforms called Inclusive, and they're basically an Airbnb for minorities. So they started a couple of years back because there was this big discrimination case on Airbnb where black people were discriminated, right? Sorry, I'm really...
Water doesn't help?
No, I think I just need to talk it off. So what they want to do is basically they built their platform saying we don't want to show too much information about people, so there's no possibility to discriminate. So I won't see your picture, I won't see your name or age or gender. But what happened is then there's no trust either, because there's no data about you. So what we're working towards is to create a profile where you have no information that can be discriminated on, but you still have your reputational data. So you would have your ratings and reviews, but nothing about who your gender or name and so on that can be discriminated.
So somewhat more anonymous.
Exactly, but still enough data to create trust, but not discriminate. Yeah.
You've already, in the just over a year that Deemly has been around, you've already opened an office in London, if I'm not mistaken. Why would you go to the UK in times of Brexit? Not relevant for this conversation,
No,
but I was surprised.
Yeah, so the sharing economy is growing a lot there, and it's obviously where we're focused. Yeah, and the legislation is much more open there, so it makes sense for us. Yeah.
And you have clients in the Netherlands as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're growing the market here as well. I think the biggest platform is Barco, which is a boat sharing platform. Yeah.
And that's why you were here, that we were able to have you here live rather than just via Skype. I'm very curious, how many of you would sign up for Deemly as individuals if you could? You can't yet as an individual. You can, also from the Netherlands. How many people are interested in signing up for Deemly?
No one.
1, 2, okay, I'll come to you. And then I'll come to you, Tijmen. What's the we gaan toch even door in het Engels voor haar. What's the advantage for you?
Yeah, sure. I think as a consumer it only has an upside, because I will only use it if I have a good reputation on that certain platform. So I won't use it if I don't have a good reputation, and that's why it works for me as a consumer.
Doesn't that make it worthless?
No, because it gives me access to some other platforms where I have not been active before. So I think that's what it's for.
So you can take your reputation with you like a little suitcase to another platform.
Yeah, and I will only use it if my reputation is okay. So that's why I think it works.
So everybody on Deemly has a 5-star reputation, Sarah.
No, they don't actually. When we look at the distribution of users, we actually see, yes, there's a high percentage of good reviews, but there is on all platforms. So even individual platforms, you would also see high ratings. So obviously that also reflects in our aggregation, yeah.
Hi, I've got a different question. I'm just wondering how easy it is to manipulate your reputation. I mean, if somebody is against you or you have a bad reputation or a negative review, how long will that haunt you? I don't know.
How long will a negative review haunt you?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we aggregate from the different platforms. So it depends on the platforms. Sorry about my voice.
I know.
Yeah, so it depends on the different platforms' choice in terms of how they do their ratings and reviews. So I can't say that on a general basis. That depends on the individual platform. Yeah, and we show. I mean, we have an aggregation, but we also show the individual ratings. So you can actually go in and see how the aggregation is created, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Well,
Oh, please.
I mean, if you have all these negative reviews because maybe someone on purpose is against you, then who can you talk to defend yourself or to make it unhappen?
Yeah. So if you
Waar ga ik verhaal halen, as Martijn said. Yeah.
Okay, so if you get a bad review, obviously on a platform, you would have to go to that platform and say, this is not, I don't agree with this rating and review. So we don't have access to or manipulate or change any ratings and reviews that are coming into our system. So that would be up to the individual platform.
Hi. I was also wondering, do you have like a certain methodology how you aggregate to one maybe super score? And if so, well, is there like some kind of logic in that? And the second question is, have you ever considered like yourself making old reviews less valuable than new reviews?
Yes.
Yeah.
So to answer your second question first, yes, that's what we do. So we do have an algorithm that creates a score from 0 to 100. It's something that we're putting less emphasis on. We created that to easily decipher all the ratings. But I think what's more interesting and what we're seeing on all rating and review systems across different platforms is that you should put more emphasis on the written reviews, right? So there's 5-star ratings, that's one thing. But the written reviews say a lot more about a person. And that's also why we're going into what's called sentiment analysis. So you can go in and say, how trustworthy is that person, or how negative or positive is a written review? And what we see when we compare the numeric, okay, sorry, it's a little technical now, but when you
I think this audience could probably handle it.
Yeah, okay, good. So when you look at the numerical ratings compared to the written reviews, is that the numerical rating is always more positive than the written review. So we're trying to push for, the platforms that we work with and advise that they should always have written reviews, not just 5-star ratings, because it doesn't really say a lot. And as you mentioned before, there's always positive discrimination. Everyone just gives you 5 stars. But actually, when you look at the text reviews, it's much more differentiated. Yeah.
I'd like to ask Tijmen Schep to stand up and tell us why you think, Tijmen, that deemly is... Tijmen will be our last speaker of the evening, but I know he has outspoken views on this. And so I wanted to ask you to tell us why you think deemly is an example of what you call dystopia.
That's an interesting... I'll get to that in my talk in a way. So that's what my talk is about. And I've been using deemly as an example of dystopia for quite some time. And I actually missed the part at the ending of the video where they go, better you're sharing, which is... I always mouth that. But there's two things that I heard here, which is... Like, you asked an interesting question, which was, this isn't new, right? And I always get the same question. And the thing is, and you said, we're just aggregating it, right? As if that makes it fine. But the thing is, scale matters. Right? It's not as if people have been killing forever. So if we have a war, it's the same thing basically. No, it's different. It's the scale matters, right? And that's what is going on here. Again, also the thing that you clearly see that algorithm here is not neutral, right? That there is someone weighing things. That was your question, which you're pointing out. Yes, you do weigh things. You make a decision on that. You say we like written reviews more than this. We weight something. So it's not neutral, and there's something there that has to be, as Martijn very well said, has to be transparent. I think that's an important question. And the third thing that really freaked me out was that you mentioned the blockchain, because I really hate the blockchain. The blockchain is the most horrible invention ever because the thing is designed not to forget anything. That's the whole point. It doesn't forget. Like you can't fake it, you can't fuck it with it, and it won't forget. That's why it makes it so valuable for trust, but it also means that we as people, we need to have a clean slate in our lives. Like once every 7 years, we need to, you change, you get a new second chance. The blockchain doesn't allow for second chances. So I'm glad you say that you weigh it and that all the things weigh down, but that means that the power to do that is with you and your company and how you decide on that. right? Because blockchain, the data will still be there, right? And it's dangerous. Yeah.
Curious what Sara has to say to this. Thank you, Tijmen. So, Sara.
To all of the points. To all of the points.
Whichever you find the most important.
It's, I think, and we discussed this over dinner as well, and I heard the Chinese credit scoring being mentioned as well. And I think the big difference here is that this is voluntary, right? So this is for the generation now that's coming up, sharing everything. Like, I have a lot of friends that account for their Airbnb income in their rent. Should they not be allowed to earn, more money for their rent, if that's what their reputation can get them? In terms of the blockchain, I'm not a blockchain expert, but it's something that we're looking into. And in my mind, it also means that we will put it out there not to be the judges on how trustworthy they are. We try to be as transparent with all the data, so all the data can be viewed, and it's up to the individual peer-to-peer to assess that in the actual transaction when they say, okay, do I trust you? Here's the data. And then it's up to you to say, okay, well, someone might trust you with a 3-star rating, and some might only trust you if you have 5 stars. So if anyone has any, input on it, I'm open ears. It's not a perfect system.
And finally, the argument of Tijmen that scale does matter.
Yeah, in terms of, can you elaborate on what you mean?
Aggregation is not harmless, right? You're making
Sure.
something that's new that wasn't there before, and that makes it valuable, interesting, and prominent, and that matters. So, yeah.
I think I'll come back to the fact that scale also matters in terms of the individual. So if I'm active on a lot of platforms, why would I not be able to have access to that data myself and own it, as you said, a little handbag that I can carry around? I think that's only fair. And yes, right now we're facilitating that. We don't own that data, we're facilitating it. And hopefully, again, the blockchain, I hope that will alleviate some of that issues where it's not us, handling that.
Well, I think it's... Sorry, Tijmen. Okay, yeah. But it's absolutely fascinating the way you, with deemly, have gone straight to the heart of the matter with data and using our trust as in each other, digitalizing that commodity with all the pros and cons that there are.
Yeah.
And you already have customers in Holland, so I'm sure that there will be more. But I think it was really interesting to talk about what something, not just what deemly is, but what it means. Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you very much, Sara Brodersen.